Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing today? Today, I'd like to have a look at whether we as Muslims are better off. And without becoming also philosophical about trying to specify what we mean by better off, let's just dive in and see where this takes us. Before we do that, let me just say that I come from a big family. My mother and father both had four siblings and they all got married, all had between two and four children. So I have a whole string of cousins. Of course, I don't see all of them. Most of them I see on religious holidays, which is twice a year, Eid days, and of course funerals. But most of those have already happened, and we next. So um, we don't really see that much of each other. Some of us I see quite often in the sense that we socialize and we go out together, but most of them I don't see. You know, it happens, and that's one of the things that we should actually look at when asking, are we better off? The first thing that comes to mind is that financially speaking, we, my generation, is definitely better off than the generation before us, my parents and their siblings. And in fact, even their friends and everybody else, their contemporaries, if you like, their contemporaries really, their generation. There's a definite difference in the financial situation. But then that's about the only thing. If I look at my generation, the first thing that comes to mind is people live apart from one another. They live very far from one another. We don't interact that often. It's all about work, work, work. So we work hard for the things that we have and the things that we pursue. But the other thing is we have also adopted a lot of their social ills. One of the main things is the divorce rate. If I look at if I look at my cousins, the divorce rate is high. None of my parents, mother or father, none of them were divorced. None, not one. But amongst my cousins, okay, there are a lot more, but there's a very high divorce rate. Very high. I mean, I don't want to give a figure now, but a lot of them are divorced. And that has a huge impact on social life because we are supposed to be about family life. Now, if I look a generation down, I look at the children of all the cousins, they all living a life as dictated to by social media. The way they dress, I mean, the female cousins who all walk around in these tight dresses with the painted faces. Yeah, I mean, they paint their faces. It's not makeup, they paint the entire face, they look like somebody else. Everything is hanging out, everything is showing. Like the Hadith said, the women will be dressed, but they will be naked. Confusing at the time, but it's definitely not confusing to us. And they don't care. Like you're talking nonsense. You're old, you're talking about religion. We have no time for religion. So are we better off? Do they really think that they can work things out differently, live according to what they're thinking and what they're feeling right at this point where they're 20 or 30 years old? You know, I'm fortunate in that I have an extremely good memory. I can only remember what incidents happened. I don't only remember uh, past events. I can also remember what I was thinking way back in my 20s. I'm now in my early 60s. I can remember what it was like to be 20 odd and 30 odd. I can remember what we thought, how we thought we were thinking so clearly, and old people were, their minds were shot. Now that I'm old, okay, first of all, I notice that I'm very different to other old people. I'm not the kind of person who can sit around not having anything to do, can't really think, don't talk, like you're withering away, your brain doesn't work anymore. I'm fortunate, alhamdulillah, in that I'm not like that. I'm physically active. I'm turning 62 this year, but I go to the gym thrice a week. And, and I keep myself mentally active. I'm still working, still teaching, still trying to figure out ways to get mathematics across to the youth, even now post COVID, with all the damage that was done to education. So, is it is it good? Are the young people better off doing what they feel is whatever they want? I mean, today's world is you're free to do whatever you want, do as you like. All women's ideas. There's no such thing. I mean, they think that they've made this huge discovery. And you know what the worst thing about this new world is? You know what the worst thing is? There's no place for old people. Look at the television. Check on social media. There's no old people on social media. So old people don't have a presence. And if you have had your brain conditioned by television and movies and social media, and there's no old people, then old people don't exist in your brain. And that's what's happening. If you go around, walk around, I don't like malls, but sometimes my wife drags me off to a mall. Most of the time I'll sit in the car, but sometimes I'll go inside, especially if it's hot. But I don't go into the mall because I want to be there. I go because I have to be there. But the first thing I notice is that young people, they walk out of the way. And I'm big and I'm well built. So they taking their chances. But I can see that they don't have any intention of treating me like an old person. And look how I look. I mean, you can see I'm in my 60s. But it's like it doesn't register, or you're not supposed to be there. You're some kind of apparition, which doesn't bode well. I mean, these young people, I know that at the moment when you are in your 20s and your 30s, there's no concept of getting old in your mind. You have absolutely no concept. To you, it's not as if you're going to one day be that old person that you seeing there. And yes, I understand that it's a vicious world that you live in. It's dangerous nowadays, especially for a man, not even an old man like me, but a 30-year-old or even a 20-year-old. It's dangerous to help a female or a child. That's how warped today's society is. In my day, people applauded when you helped the old person or when you helped a child or try to find a lost child's parent. Today, you can't take that risk. They'll accuse you of being a child pervert or something that their perverted brains can think of. So they're not better off. They're definitely not better off. Yes, we messed the world up in terms of pollution. We've messed the oceans up. There's global warming. There was a hole in the ozone. We don't hear about it. So who knows? Maybe it's worse. Maybe it's healed. I don't know. They don't talk about it anymore. But rivers are polluted. Apparently, the next big thing is going to be water shortages, and people are going to fight wars over water. And having a water shortage is definitely not better off. I mean, water is the first thing, the very first thing that you have to look for if you find yourself stranded somewhere. Because 2, 3 days without water, and you're going to be half dead, and you're going to die very quickly. And I'm South African and I live in South Africa, and this country is decaying because no one is looking after it. The government is not governing, they're not doing anything, they don't maintain anything, so everything is falling apart. The railways, the airways, the power generation to the country, the power utilities. We get load shedding for hours and hours a day. It's gone up to stage 6 where For 12 hours of the day, we don't get any electricity. They're clearly not better off. Clearly, there are no jobs at all. And South Africa is only one of the countries. There are a number of countries that's worse than South Africa. And it's all about globalization. Globalization is just a way for America to manipulate and uh, destroy everybody. I mean, just immediately off the top of my head, I can think about Venezuela, Syria, Sri Lanka, South Africa, Greece, Italy, amongst others, having a terrible time. So I know I'm old and I know I'm very negative about the new generation, and they have to fend for themselves and make the best of the world that they are inheriting. But there's a lot that we as old people can still do. So give us until the day that we're not here anymore. Salam alaikum.